You're listening to Hashtag No Filter with Zack Peter. That's me, your naturally platinum blonde pop culture connoisseur. I'm the reality TV junkie, self-improvement addict, and host with only the hottest tea spilled fresh weekly. For more hot takes, go and give me a follow at Just Plain Zack, because I always keep it funny and I always keep it cute. And if you're like me and you want to stay up to date with the latest reality tea, go and give us a follow at No Filter with Zack on the Instagram, or you can join our private Facebook group. The link is in the description below, everybody. Are you ready? I hope you have a can of I Stole Kim's Goddamn House inspired by Beverly Hills, or maybe you have a can of Drag Me. I dare you. Whatever vibe you're sipping on today, whichever one of the rosés you're sipping on, I hope you are channeling that vibe and you are sipping it as you're listening to this week's episode. And if you haven't ordered my Housewives inspired rosé, you can order it at nofilterwine.com. It is 14% alcohol by volume, but less than a gram of sugar. They are all right here. We have Drag Me, I Stole Kim's Goddamn House. I'm ready to mention it all. Now tell me who gonna check me, boo, and I'm ready to flip a table. Oh my goodness. Be sure to order at nofilterwine.com. Thank you guys so much for all the support. I really appreciate you supporting the wine brand. And there may be an expansion soon. Maybe. We shall see. Wink, wink. Maybe you can take some guesses as to what you think the next rosé should be. But definitely go to nofilterwine.com, support it. Thank you for the love that you've shown so far. It really does mean a lot to me. And now I'm excited to break down this week's episode. So I did put out a call to some of you guys to ask you if you've ever met the Girardis. Have you ever met Erika? Have you ever met Tom Gerardi? And if you have, what has your experience been? As you know, I had a former client, Dana Smoller, on the podcast a few months ago where she shared her experience working with Tom Gerardi and how she felt that he could have possibly thrown her case for profit. And I was curious if there were more clients out there. I've talked to some of the clients, some of the victims. Not everybody's willing to come forward and be public. I get that. I understand that. I respect that. In due time, I'm sure more people will be willing to speak out and share their stories and perspectives on working with Tom Gerardi. Maybe we'll do a whole episode dedicated to former clients that have either worked with Tom or had settlements that he helped negotiate. Whatever the case may be, I think that may be a future episode where we'll dive into Tom Gerardi and Girardi Keese. Today's going to focus just on Erika Jayne / Erika Girardi. Stories that you guys have sent in. I spoke to a couple of you on the phone. I have 2 guests on the show today that are going to be sharing their experiences meeting Erika. It's so interesting to hear everyone's experiences and realize like how different they are. So we'll start off with Taylor Ferber. She is a podcast host and a entertainment reporter who has met and interviewed Erika. She's also gotten hit on by Tom Gerardi. So we're going to dive into that, talk about Beverly Hills a little bit. And then I have Amir Yass, who you may know of from TikTok. He's also been on this podcast before. He's going to be sharing his experience working with Erika on her book tour for Pretty Mess. Very interesting, very different perspectives. And then at the end, I'll talk about a couple of stories that you guys have sent in to moi. Not de moi, but to moi, me, Zack Peter. And we'll dissect it further. We'll dissect it further. All right. Shall we break? Let's first start off by welcoming on Taylor. She's the host of the Cancel Me Baby podcast. Please welcome the very gorgeous and very unfiltered Taylor Ferber.
My body, my panties, my panty gate. I mean, we are ready.
I'm ready. I can't wait. Now my pan. I don't know what's going on with my panties downstairs, but they're ready too. So you have some firsthand experience with the Girardis, correct?
I do. And funny enough, about, marital relationship status, all this kind of stuff we're seeing on play now. So it has been quite an experience watching it unfold.
Okay. So
it is like Is this a Chris Nolan movie? I literally, I don't even know. I can't keep up. I'm confused. What's happening?
Every day I feel like there's another like hook, jab, and sinker that just comes and I'm like, whoa, or another story of another car crash. Like I'm trying so hard to keep up with all of it. So we'll dive into all of the Girardi stuff and what we thought and what we each think of what's been playing out. But I want to know what your experience is with Tom and with Erika. Like, were you a Trisha A. Bigelow mistress on the side? Were you, what is your experience with Tom and Erika?
I mean, I wish. Like in my wildest
Wouldn't that be
fantasies.
great?
Okay,
You'd be on CNN, or not on CNN. You'd be on the Today Show, just giving your exclusive.
Right. Well, do you want chronological? I feel like chronological order makes most sense.
Yeah.
So
Take me to the beginning.
Okay. So I was a red carpet reporter in Hollywood for many years. And as it was, I had a very unconventional method of interviewing celebrities. It wasn't the BS, what's it like doing this? What's it like right now? No, I got into the nitty gritty shit and we had a really fun time. Sorry, can I curse on here, Zack?
Yeah. Hashtag no filter.
Okay, that's what I thought. So the first time I met Erika was on the phone. And to give you guys context, because I know these are Real Housewives lovers, it was during the Pantygate debacle with Dorit. It was December 2017. I have my little notes here, so I have the story right. So it was on the phone, Zack, and me being just going rogue. I still have the audio. I opened the conversation instead of being like, okay, so this season on Real Housewives, I'm like, let's talk about you and Tom, because like you, I am with a man who is very much my senior, like 28 years. So that's how I started talking to her about it right away. I'm like, let's just like braid each other's hair, have a Girl Scout fire,
was that a
pit
true
meeting.
story, or was that a let me try and get her to let her guard down with something I can relate to her on?
True story.
Okay.
It was a true story. So obviously not knowing any of this, I'm like, I really admire, your relationship and how you just hold it down and you don't let the people judging you get the best of you. Cause I said to her, it's really hard dating someone so much older. You get a lot of judgment, you get from family, friends, people don't get it. So I'm like, show me your ways, basically. Now,
what was the nature of the interview? Why were you interviewing her? Was it to promote Beverly Hills? What was?
Yes.
Okay.
I was interviewing her for Bustle at the time. The article is on bustle.com, but obviously none of this is in there. So technically, by the way, I'm just going to paraphrase what she said because technically this was all off the record, but we were talking about her relationship with Dorit at the time because it was when the whole Pantygate thing was going on. Right. So, and I'll just say too, like she couldn't have been sweeter. You know how they call her cold?
Yeah. She
is like hard to get stuff out of. I feel like you have to warm up to her, but right away she was just like game, super sweet, like we're sitting there having dirty martinis. So, basically what she said was, I get the sense that she really loved him. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to again say verbatim what she said, but it was kind of like, if you keep each other on, each other's toes and, like each other and get along and have things in common, kind of fuck what everyone else says. It's their, it's your life, not theirs.
Right.
And I said to her, I didn't expect to be, like someone so much who's so much older than me because it's hard. And she kind of was like, honey, neither did I. So overall, I got the sense that she really loved him.
Yeah.
And to cut to 2 years later, I interviewed her at the season premiere for Denise's season.
Got it.
And she remembered me. So this was in person now, and I have photos. She remembered me. And I said, I'm the one who, was venting to you, talking to you about the older man thing. And she asked me like wholeheartedly again, how is it going? And kind of the same idea. Like, if it works for you, honey, it works for you. Fuck everybody else. This was February 2019.
And were you still in the relationship?
Yeah, it's been on and off.
Okay.
It's always like been a thing. I mean, I haven't married him. Like she married Tom and, they were together for, what was it? 20 years. So yeah, like I said, I really got the sense that she was like super secure in it, confident about it. And was like, I love this man and everyone else can, buzz off.
Yeah.
I even ran into Andy Cohen because this is like in the middle of all this. I think it was the Critics' Choice Awards. And again, my priorities, I'm like, Andy, we want to see more of Tom. We love Tom and their whole dynamic. And Andy turned around to me and he was like, I know, he's great, right? So watching all this, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. You also had an interaction with Tom Gerardi, correct?
Yes. So this is the funniest. This is like what's crazy is I bumped into him. It was March 2020. So he is like at the ripe age of 81, popping all around town. I was at a Super Tuesday event Billy Crystal was performing at the Abbey.
Okay.
In LA, the Abbey,
Yep.
like the, iconic gay bar. And I'm there hanging out, and lo and behold, someone bumps into me. I turn around. It's Tom Gerardi, like by himself. Might as well have like been in a diaper, right? And he is like swagging all around town. And he said to me, I never mind bumping into a pretty girl.
Oh.
And I'm like, it wasn't even, here's the thing though, it wasn't even creepy. It felt to me like kind of like jokey grandpa charming, like not Harvey Weinstein, more like, you know what I mean? Like kind of like cute. And I said to him back, I was like, Tom Gerardi, way to make my day, like something like that. So again, now it's funny seeing all of this play out because now they're talking about him cheating on her and all this. So it's been an experience. Yes.
So what do you think about the allegations that Tom's been having affairs for all these years?
Okay. So I feel like it's also, with all of this said, I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets, I guess, if you will, among people in Hollywood that they had. I don't know how much truth there is to this, but people always wondered if they had some sort of like open arrangement. And truth be told, I actually had heard whisperings of Erika kind of doing her own thing on the side more than Tom. I see you're nodding, so I see that's something you've also have heard. Yes. Yeah.
And people don't realize how common that is in Los Angeles. Like people, like they think because they're a celebrity or, a power couple is married that, they must be completely monogamous. And it's like, no, like 80% of the relationships in that public figure world are not as honest or genuine or monogamous as people would want to believe that they are. There's pressure to stay in this relationship and there's pressure to put out this image and create this facade. So we have to maintain that image for the sake of our reputation. PR doesn't want, your publicist doesn't want it to be known that you go to sex dungeons every Saturday night.
Although we probably should, because we would be so much more interested and
I agree. It would be so much juicier.
Yeah. But, and the thing with them was, and she would also talk to me about the shit she would get for like the whole gold digger, stereotype. And she and I would joke about that because the guy I was with like wasn't a rich guy. So I would always joke with her. I'd be like, at least you got that going for you. Like what am I doing to myself over here or whatever? And that's what also made me really think she really loved him, because what the hell did she have to lose? Like, who would stick around for 20 years? She could have easily been like, bye, bitch, I'm hot. I have money now. So I really didn't think it was like a gold digging. I really thought that they got each other. I thought that they stimulated each other. I really thought that they added something to each other's lives. She could have gotten up and walked away,
so
I think.
Do you believe that he had multiple mistresses?
I don't know. Do you? I mean, I feel like even the interaction, remember on Housewives when all the girls met him and they talked about how he had like a twinkle in his eye and was so charming. Even though my interaction with him was so brief, I got that sense too. But again, it wasn't like the creepy, I don't know if I see him as like this sort of come sleep with me, baby, like shady kind of thing. But then again, look at all of this business dealings now we're seeing.
He was good he was good at concealing his cards. I think I'm not surprised that there were young 21-year-olds wanting to bang him if he was giving them, Birkins and Range Rovers and, buying Trisha A. Bigelow a new booty while she's sitting up on, her court justice seat. I'm not surprised because, like I said, a lot of these things are very common in Los Angeles.
Right.
it's very common in this world. Would I be banging an 80-year-old man? Like, he would have to be giving me something pretty damn good if I'm, if I don't love him and I know he's married, like, I better be getting something cute.
I'd be like, buy my dog a house, my mom, my aunt, my cousin, just like really let's get at it.
Here's my wish list, Santa.
No, exactly. And he kind of looks like Santa, but it also makes you wonder, doesn't it? Do we really know these people? I've met and been up close and personal with so many stars, and I've had so many interactions of on and off camera of just realness and them being so human that normal, that everyday people wouldn't see them as. And this whole thing, again, watching it, I watched the documentary about him on Hulu, and it just really makes you wonder, in terms of like concealing your public persona. Right. It's like, how well do we really know these people?
What was your impression of the documentary? Or actually, before we get to the documentary, what was your impression of her on Housewives? Were you a fan of hers? Were you indifferent? Did you dislike her?
I always really loved her, especially because of the commonality and, the parallel experience. I felt like, I'm seeing this play out on screen with somebody and it's relatable, yada, yada. I have to be so honest, though. And again, I think she's a straight shooter. Tell it how it is. She's a sweetheart in person. But trying to keep up with her, I'm with Sutton this season. I don't know how much I'm buying all of this. I'm sorry. It's like whack-a-mole. I'm just like, I am lost. I'm dazed and confused. I don't even know.
See, I was not a fan of her. Not that I didn't like her, but I'm always like, I don't have like, oh my God. Well, I guess that's not true because I love Dorit. Dorit's like my favorite on the cast. I love Crystal this season. But for me, like Erika was always good, but she was never like one of my favorites. Like I liked her first season. And then after that, I was kind of like, okay, like she brings an interesting flavor to the dynamic of the group that like, okay, I get why we keep her around. She makes things interesting. She has really, good cold moments like she had with Eileen, like she had with Teddy. Like she brings it every season. And I think, I was like, cute. She can stay, don't love her, don't hate her, but she's fine.
Right.
This season though, going into it, I'm almost kind of like, I don't love her, but I'm learning to like have a little bit of a different respect for her, only because my favorite franchise is Beverly Hills. And in Beverly Hills history, we've seen Adrienne Maloof, who, when the narrative doesn't go her way, she backs out, doesn't show up at the reunion. We see Lisa Vanderpump, same thing. When it doesn't go her way, she stops filming, doesn't show up at the reunion. We see Denise Richards, when the narrative isn't going her way, bravo, 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 I'm going to sue the network. I don't want Brandi Glanville at the reunion. We see these ladies playing these cards that, to me, I'm almost like, but you know what? Despite everything that she's going through, she showed up, she filmed, she gave us like some icon, like I don't know how many times I've said, or what? Like, like she's
I'm coming for you.
I'm coming for you. Like so many good moments that we've gotten from her that I'm almost like, I don't like Michael Rappaport, but I'm also kind of like, but like him standing her, like I get it, and I don't think there's enough credit. Like people are like, oh, Sutton and Garcelle are carrying this season. I'm like, no, they have a storyline because of Erika, and Erika is arguably the one that carried the season. And again, I'm not an Erika fan, but like, I'm like, you have to give respect where respect is due.
I mean, there's a part of me though that yes, I'm like absolutely like
here's the thing, like Moira Rose on Schitt's Creek. She's not a great person. If it were a reality show, she would be a terrible person in real life, but people love Moira Rose. So I look at it from that lens of like, this is entertainment and this is a villain, and I'm appreciating the villain of the season.
Yes. I don't know. I see both sides because there's a part of me that's like, she's committed, and how awkward with them sitting around the table being like, did you know, bitch? Because we're all wondering.
Right, yeah.
So she's not backing down. She's not pulling a Denise and shying away from it. But at the same time, I have to say, when PK was like, what the fuck? Why are you showing us your pussy?
Yeah.
When this whole situation, I was like, PK, okay, yep. Especially after watching the Hulu doc, because I do think it's sort of insensitive. It's like, if it's true and there are all these orphans and victims and people who are owed millions of dollars, and now it makes me view her differently, not only on the show, but seeing her entourage and makeup. Like still when I see her on the show getting her makeup done, I'm like, bitch, how are we affording this makeup team? So
yes, when we take it off the show and we get back into real life and you see her social media posts, I've been a huge critic of the social media. I think it's tactless, it's tone deaf, and it's insensitive. I've tried to analyze it and tried to understand where it's coming from. I mean, the only thing I've been able to kind of make sense of it is it's some sort of defense mechanism of like, you know, I'm going to show you that I'm still going to rise even though you think I'm this evil, awful person. Again, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't condone it. I can understand it to a degree, but I can't endorse it. You know what I mean? But you know, from a show lens, I appreciate the character on the television show for entertainment value. When you take it out of the show and you get back into real life, it's a little harder to digest. But again, with everything that I've dug up, like there really is no proof that she knew anything or that she was complicit in anything or that she's culpable for anything legally. Her stories on the show are very hyperbolic. They, you know, are very much exaggerated and hyped up. But then when you bring it down to like, well, how many times when we're telling a story to somebody do we hype up the details as well? Like, are the things that she's doing on the show truly evil, or are they, you know, pretty human? If any of us were in that situation.
Yes. And listen, I love nothing more than being the most dramatic, like on my podcast, Cancel Me Baby. I will go so far. I'm so hyperbolic. I'm like, okay, so guys, I took a spaceship around the Mars and then I came back. Like, I love it. But also, I'm sorry. Like, I love to put on a show.
Yeah.
And I know she does too, but I'm sorry. How many times, why does every story involve a flipping of a car, a concussion, you know, brought back to life, reincarnated experience? I'm like, I'm sorry. How many times do you know somebody who flips a car? Why does every story involve a car flipping? So now I'm starting to be like, my mom and I will watch in this room on this TV, literally look at each other and be like, I can't again with a car flip.
This last week's episode where Kathy Hilton takes them on a girls trip. That episode for me, when she was saying like allegedly about him and the car accident, that's where I started to be like, okay, I've been trying to understand you and give you the benefit of the doubt. But like at some point, when is too far too far? When are we, you know, dragging these things out a bit much? Like, it's hard to keep up with it all. Like you have to have a handy dandy notebook and be looking for all the Blues Clues. And I'm like, where's Steve? Steve, can you come back? Give us another TED Talk to like get us through this.
No, Steve, like, please SOS, because I also don't, I mean, I will just say, I feel like we are all Sutton. We are all Sutton. Like she is saying and asking the questions we want. And and they all agree with her, like also love a Dorit moment, but behind Erika's back, they're like, go Sutton, having a pep rally, you know, in her honor, have a Sutton mascot, and then in person, throw her under the bus, and they are crickets while Erika railroads her. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, because it's like,
I'm curious to see how that plays out at the reunion, because now Erika's seen all of the footage of what everybody else has actually said of her in the confessionals. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said, though, and I keep trying to remind people of this. Sutton, Garcelle, all of the women in recent interviews after the show wrapped have all been very much still Team Erika. They've all said, I don't believe she's as guilty as she said. And they lived through that experience. We're just watching it from the lens of a television show. Garcelle and Sutton have both spoken out in support of Erika on more than one occasion in the interviews that they've done in recent months, which tells me there has to be some sort of conclusion or something that they were able to draw that, as an audience member, I don't know why we collectively aren't. I mean, I guess we're still watching it all sort of play out and unfold, but I mean, it's the train wreck that we cannot turn away from.
I know. I can't believe they're airing it out. Even talking about this stuff, you know, my interactions with them, I'm kind of scared. I'm not going to lie. And imagine these bitches. I can imagine why they're like, okay, but are we getting sued? Because you're threatening left, right, and sideways. I don't know. Even I'm like, well, the ghost of Tom Gerardi, you know, listen to the No Filter podcast and come after us. I mean, honestly, you know, it's intimidating. It's like this big machine, and God knows who knew what.
Do you believe the Alzheimer's and dementia?
I don't know because again, my experience with him was so recent.
Yeah.
He seemed with it then. Again,
Yeah.
it was a couple minutes, but he was alone at this event, hobnobbing with huge stars. And it was a political event too. So how out of it does one have to be? Like now, that's the other thing. It's all escalating. So it really makes me think again, I bring it back to how much do they conceal and curate? Because again, even when was it? It was 2019 when I talked to Erika in person. You know, how's it going with your thing? Oh yeah. So I don't know. It
why
really
do you
makes
think
you
she
wonder.
divorced him?
What's that?
Why do you think she divorced him?
God. To be honest with you, I feel like she didn't want to get caught up in all the legalities of this. I think she was like, this is one headache after the next, if it was a surprise to her or not. And I think she was probably like, I'm just going to separate myself before I pull a thumb, before like this Thelma and Louise car goes straight off of this cliff into doomsday. I just think she saw the writing on the wall and was like,
agree.
I'm not going to deal. Don't you think?
I think she saw the writing on the wall. I think she saw that the money was running out. I think she saw that he was in decline and she was the one kind of carrying it, because she says like she tried to tell his doctor, she tried to tell his family, like she tried to warn people about his mental decline. Whether or not that's true, I mean, granted, he is getting older, so I'm sure there are going to be a couple of signs. Whether it's full-on Alzheimer's and dementia, I'm still up in the air about. The Page 6 video definitely kind of confirmed it for me, but I still don't want to believe it. But I think she started to see the writing on the wall and was like, this train is going down fast. There's not going to be anything left for me if I stay, and I'm going to circle the drain with him. And I don't think he's been entirely honest with me in our marriage, and now I'm out.
Can you imagine spending 20 years and all the shit that she got for being called the gold digger, this and that, for it to end this
like
way?
This, I know. Like she put in her time. She's like, wait a minute. Where's my retirement money? Where's my 401k?
No. She's like, my dental insurance, my vision. But Zach, you know what also?
She's like, I took this job knowing that I was going to be taken care of.
No, exactly. I put in my time. But you know, Zach, what also gets me thinking is how okay, so now like the script has flipped so much. This is also where I'm like, hold on. Not only because of my firsthand experiences with her, you know, raving about it, her marriage, but now she's painting him as this evil man. Yeah. But let's not forget, you know, he's also the one who got her entertainment career off the ground, funded all of that. She would cry on camera on Housewives saying, he gets me, he wholeheartedly supports me, he's made my career happen, you know, been a mentor almost in a sense, and really saw her vision. So now I'm kind of like, wait a minute now, where did all of that go? Does all of this just negate that? So that's where it's also tricky, because she paints him now as this monster.
Right.
And that's also where I'm like,
and it's like, well, was he really a monster and she was just trying to keep up the image because she felt a responsibility to keep up the image? Or was he not as bad as she's describing him now? Or like, there are just so many unanswered questions with that. It's like, okay, well, you know, did he just kind of snap at her and there was a power dynamic, but like she knew what she was signing up for and she stood in that, and now she's just, you know, upping that and playing it up a bit more because it helps her situation now? Or was it that this was all really going on and it is as bad as she was saying it is, and she was trying to just make sure that she looked like she was in a happy marriage? Or was it both? Was she, you know, did she have this love and appreciation for him? Because like I would think that like you would have an appreciation for somebody when you were a struggling 27-year-old actress with the son and you're a single mom, and then a man comes into your life and is like, I'm gonna give you the world, and then he gives you the world. Like there is an appreciation there, you know, a level of gratitude that like you have to, I mean, whether you enjoy fucking him or not is beside the point, but you at least have an appreciation for the person.
That's a whole other thing. I mean, do you think that they were like doing the hibbity jibbity until the end? Remember when Garcelle asked, I'm like, yet again, all of us, what we are all dying to know. Like,
yeah, I mean, maybe, but were they like, was she enjoying? I don't know. It's so like he can't even really move. Like, what is he gonna do?
Listen, sometimes attitude is half the battle. And that's why I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if they still get it on. Even like when I saw him at that event, I had joked about it on my show, over a year ago, like fresh out of when it happened. And I was joking about it. It's like he's 81 and basically in a diaper and like, but he still has swag. Like a part of me is like, it's not even mad. So, is the swag and the confidence half the battle? Even if he can't get it. I mean, honestly,
swag,
I don't know,
confidence, and money. That's the trifecta. Swag, confidence, and money. And I think he had all three. Because, like, let's be honest, he's not a very attractive man. He's fucking 5'4". That was the biggest revelation out of the Hulu documentary, The Housewife and the Hustler, is that he was 5'4". So it's not like he was some prize, but he had money and status. And, it's I don't know if I could do it. But if I really needed it, maybe I would muster it up.
I can confirm. I mean, I'm 5'1", 5'2" on a good day. And and by then he may have even have shrunk a little when I saw him. So, but he just looked like your run-of-the-mill, jokey grandpa, telling silly stories at Christmas, that vibe. Like, not at all creeper.
So last week's episode had PK, or maybe it was the week before. It was the week before last week's episode where PK, Dorit, Kyle, and Mauricio are sitting at the table talking about everything. Hilarious comical scene. But in that scene, I remember watching him and just, I guess, throughout that episode with Dorit, where he's really shading Erika. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, he has been sitting and waiting for this moment since Pantygate, where she embarrassed him and she said, "You were looking at my panties and you have a wife." Like, he has been waiting for this moment where he can just twist the knife and pay her back. And I feel like that's why he's going so hard right now, is because it's his payback from what she did to him a few seasons ago.
That is so funny. He's like, Boy George isn't pulling the relevancy enough. So I'm going to write this joke down. I'm going to memorize it. I'm going to recite it in my sleep and have it ready for the time to do a low blow. It's funny. Honestly, all of these people, I don't know, being around them so much. I remember a time I was at this gala opening in West Hollywood, and Scott Disick was there with Sophia Richie at the time doing some stuff in the bathroom. I was right behind them in line, but PK was alone, same kind of thing as Tom Gerardi. And I remember specifically like looking around being like, you better not. Because I've heard, whisperings as well of him being shady, bi-coastal.
Yeah.
Having a wandering eye. And I also love Dory like you. And I remember looking out and being like, sir, you better not step out on Dory or else you'll be hearing from me. So he just, got in a car and went on his jolly way. But I had my eye out. I had my eye out for my girl that night for sure.
Love me some Dorit.
I know.
Yeah, you put some respect on Dorit. PK, Dorit is a catch. You ain't gonna cheat on her.
What do you think of her? Let's call it for what it is, right? Her changing face, her changing body. From the Dorit, we see pictures from her high school, even from the beginning of when she was on Beverly Hills, it doesn't even look like the same person. What are your thoughts? Like, is she owning it? Are you for it?
I'm for it. I don't think she's owning it, but the delusion is part of what I love about it. Like the fake accent and my nose is just contour. And like, she believes the lie. Like she, is so like, she has such conviction. Yes. And I'm like, you know what? I love the delusion. I'm here for it. I love mess.
I know. She's so committed. And I have to say, I've been really vocal on my show about celebrities who do all of this work and then pass it off to their fans. Like, if you take this gummy bear, you will look just like me. And I'm like, sweetheart, I've been up close and personal. I know you're a nutritionalist. I know your eyebrow plucker. Like, knock it off. And that's the thing with Dorit, is that she's just in La La Land. And let me tell you, interviewing her and meeting her in person is the exact same. It is just like she is on planet Dorit. We are around her orbit. It is rainbows. It is butterflies. I don't even know what's going on. It is, champagne in a proper champagne glass. But it's just all part of her, her real life charisma too. Like, I'm just here for it. I just want to be in her brain for a day.
I would love to just spend a day with Dorit and do a glam shoot with her and an Instagram photo shoot. Like, she just is in her own world and she just owns it. I love it.
Everything is just great. Everything is just like, it's great. It's peachy. And God, to have one of her brain cells, I mean, what a time. It would just be glorious. Yes.
Okay, Taylor, your podcast is called Cancel Me, Baby. What are we canceling? What are you dishing on each week on your podcast?
Oh, nothing. And that is the twist, is that everything goes for once. I bring in, like today, I talk about pop culture, but I bring in my raw stories and I always take it somewhere deeper. So, unlike Dorit's brain cells, I like to get people thinking and going and moving. And so I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of the cancel culture, and I don't want my listeners to be either. So I always bring it somewhere different. And I really get into the controversy, and it's really sexy. It's fun. It's politically incorrect. But I get into the places, people are afraid to, and it's definitely a ride. It's definitely, it's fun.
We need more of that refreshing, not being afraid of being canceled energy, and the other thing too, especially as it relates like all of the Girardi stuff, is I always like to play devil's advocate. I always like to look at it from both sides. I've even had like a therapist on the show to like get into like Erika's psyche and be like, it looks like she's defending Tom. What could this be, And I like to break all of these things down in a way that, like, listen, there are so many other podcasters and YouTubers and Instagrammers that are just bashing her left and right, and it's getting them a ton of likes and a ton of follows, and it's cheap. I don't go for cheap shit. Premium grade, everything, even the dick that I get is top quality USDA certified organic, baby. So,
say it again, no GMO. I mean, it's just all the way. No, absolutely. It's all the way around. Yes. And I also feel like, again, about not being cheap, I feel like on my show, oftentimes people will say, you're saying exactly what I'm thinking, but I'm afraid
and I'm afraid to say it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, and a lot of times I have the not PC, like, I don't know if you want to call it an unpopular opinion, but I know it's one that people will be like, thank God. So,
thank God somebody said it, because I was thinking it and nobody else is willing to say it. Thank you so much, Taylor. Where can people listen to your podcast if they do want to learn more?
Absolutely. So you can find me across the board. Instagram, YouTube is Talk to Me Taylor, and my show is called Cancel Me Baby. It is on IGTV. It is a whole 5D experience, honey. It's visual, audio, Spotify, iHeart, the whole thing. So come and join us. The train is leaving, and I want you on board. Let's go.
I love it. Thank you so much, Taylor, for chatting with me today. All right, so switching back to the Girardis, I have on a very special guest. You may remember him. He's been on the podcast before. He's got his own podcast. He's got a poppin' TikTok. Please welcome back to #NoFilter, Mr. Amir Yas.
Hello, Zack. What's up?
How you doing, boo?
Good. Just can't complain, Erika's getting the karma she deserves, so I'm happy.
Okay, so you have actually worked with Erika, correct? Back when you were like a celebrity publicist. So can you give me your experience? Well, actually, before we get into your experience, what was your impression of her on Housewives prior to meeting her? Were you a fan? Did you like her? Did you hate her? What was your impression of her?
So I always believed that the gays made her. So I was one of like the maybe 150 people that waited in line at Gay Pride to see her. Like, we were definitely like very, team Too Much with Erika. We were very supportive of her. And, who do you think got her to like 7 or 8 on the dance charts? It's not straight people. So she better know where she comes from. So I liked her. I always liked her. I thought she was a great character. And I think that the beauty of an alter ego is that like Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, she's Beyonce with her staff. The problem with Erika is that she's Erika Jayne with everyone, and that's problematic. I have an alter ego. Amir Yass is like irreverent and an asshole, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Like you have to separate who you work for. And when you're getting paid $100 for the entire day, she treated me like dirt. I really went in there being a fan, and I don't fangirl. I've worked with A-list people that like they eat Erika Jayne for breakfast.
Yeah.
So for me, like I don't fangirl, and I definitely was fangirling over her, and the way she treated me was very, very hard. It was rough.
What was the setting? Why were you there? What was she there for? Was it an interview? Was it a photo shoot? And what was your role in it?
So one of my friends is like a YouTube star, and I was going to blow her up, but I was like, why say your name? Whatever. So she's a YouTube interviewer, and she couldn't make it to like, so Erika Jayne was promoting her book, Pretty Mess, on Fox 11 morning show. So she's like, oh, I can't make it. So can you go fill in for me? And I was like, sure. She's like, I'll just throw you like $100. And I was like, whatever. And I had like a fever. I had strep throat. I was like sick. So I don't say that a lot because people then are going to be like, oh, you're like victimizing yourself, whatever. So I went there, and the minute I walked in, she gave me like dirty looks in the green room. And then I knew her makeup artist. So we started talking and chatting, whatever. And he's like, oh, I did Meghan Trainor's makeup, but she like took it off and it looks so bad. Look at this. And Erika's like, don't show that stranger. I'm like, I'm not a stranger. I introduced myself when I walked in. Like, I don't like, she just, I think, I don't know if she thought I was someone else, but she was just like out to get me. It was like dirty looks. And, you know, it was funny because the CEO of Sprinkles was there in the room. She was on the show as well. And she was like, that woman keeps giving you dirty looks. And I was like, yeah, I know. I was like, just stay in your lane. And like, anyway, and then like the producer came over and is like, Erika refuses to go on live TV. And like in the green room, you can see the live feed, and her book was like on the screen. And it was like one more commercial. And I was like, bitch, you got to get up. Like you're wearing like 7-inch heels. You got to walk over to the studio. And she's like, I don't have to do what you say. And I was like, no, that's exactly what you need to do. And I don't know if she thought that that was me being rude or too stern with her, but like she finally acquiesced and goes over and does the show. And then we go to her office, and then she's like, I walk in and she's like, oh my God, yeah, I know who you are. Like someone introduced me. And I'm like, why are you like out to get me? Like it just felt very aggressive. And then like the interview that like basically is shooting her in the foot right now, the interviewer, she's like, I spent $500,000 on glam. I was in the room when that interview was done. That was literally this YouTube person that interviewed her. And it was crazy, Zack, because I was like in the background, just like checking in, making sure. She's like, I can see you. And I'm like, I know, I'm not a ghost, bitch. Like, she's just, she was just so infuriating. And then like, long story short, she ended up calling from a private plane, tried to get me fired. And my friend's like, he doesn't work for me. Like, that was the most bizarre thing, is that she was trying to cancel me. And I'm like, I don't even work for you. Like I filled in for someone. It's just so bizarre.
What was the conversation with trying to get you fired? What did she call your friend and ask for? Or how did you even come up in the conversation?
So my friend was like, I don't want to be dramatic. And I was like, please be dramatic. But yeah, she didn't tell me exactly what was said, but like, it was something along the lines of like, he's very unprofessional. He was like talking bad about me. I don't know if she thought when we were talking about Meghan Trainor that we were talking about her makeup. I don't really know what was going on, like what she misunderstood. But all I have to say is that from the minute I walked in that room, she was out to get me. And I don't really understand. And I'd never met her before. I'd never talked about her. Nothing. So I just thought it was really weird. And then like, it was weird because my friend's like, yeah, she wanted me to like, and then she wanted to like, basically like blacklist you. And I'm like, and then I never worked with this person again. Again, my friend, whatever, like she chose to believe what she said, but like that made me look bad. And you know, it's a small town, everyone talks. So like, again, I came out fine, but like what she did could have ruined someone else's career. That's the reason I talked about it. And people were like, well, why are you talking about it so late? I'm like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I had nothing to do. So that's what I did.
So what was her narrative about you? Like, what was her experience? Because obviously she has her version of the story that she gave to your friend. Like, what was it that she thought you did that was inappropriate?
Well, my friend wouldn't tell me. So it was never confirmed, which is like the annoying thing. Because then when I posted the TikTok, her publicist, Jack, that I know, reached out and was trying to be like, do a cease and desist. And like, why are you making up lies? I'm like, honey, you were there. Yeah. Like, he's the one that introduced me. And she was like, oh, I know who he is. And he literally was like, what happened? Like, can you give me more details? And I'm like, I honestly, genuinely don't know why she just like clicked off like that. I have no idea. It's really bizarre.
It is
very bizarre.
And
but
when did this was what, like 2017, 2018 when the book came out?
2018. It was in the middle of 2018. Yeah. I remember because I was starting to do like some little like freelance shit. And it was just crazy to me because again, like I met so many people, a lot of Bravo people, a lot of A-list people, and no one's ever acted like that. And the way she comes for people on the show and the yelling and the and what, she was kind of talking to me like that. And it was just, it was very, I understand why people get scared of her, but like, if you're not fucking me or like, you're not my family, or I don't like, you're not paying my bills, I don't really care what the fuck you have to say. So she thought she was going to intimidate me. And that's the last thing she did, because I continued to stay in the shot. I continued to do my job, and I wasn't going to really let this like blonde rat tell me what to do, really. And look at her now. She looks like a little rat running around TJ Maxx. So good luck to you.
What are your thoughts of her watching this season of Beverly Hills?
Well, when I was talking to Heather McDonald about this, we were like, what I'm upset about is that like victims are going to have to watch her be like, I have no money. And honey, you're driving a Range Rover, and I know the neighborhood she lives in. You're paying $11,000 in rent. Why did you not stay at Kyle's house? You went and got a casita that cost $2,000 that's going right into Kathy Hilton's pocket, which again, kudos to Kathy Hilton. But like, I don't like, if I knew Kathy Hilton, I'd ask for a discount or something, like, I just feel like she's being so like, oh my God, like, and I get that they're not letting her sell her clothes, but stop wearing that stuff. Like if it was me and my husband had done this, I would start wearing black or like simple clothes. I would be like embarrassed. There's no part of her that's embarrassed. And that's what really bothers me about her.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, granted, it's easier to say what you would do without being in that position. But like, I would think that if I were in that position, I would just want to keep a low profile. I would be like, I don't know if I would be as flat. Like, I get the defense mechanism of it, of just trying to be like, I'm going to, keep up this brand and show you all that I'm going to be okay and I'm going to survive. I get that. But at the same time, it's also just like, I just think if I were in that position, I would probably retreat a little bit and not be as out in public and not be as, flashy. But then to be fair, at the same time, you see her dressed down walking down the street and then everybody's like, oh, look she's at the gas station or her hair's a mess. She's broke now. So I feel like she's also kind of in this impossible situation of like, if she glams it up, then she's insensitive. And if she glams it down, then she's, trying to gain sympathy from the public because, she wants them to look at her shopping at TJ Maxx because she's trying to make it seem like she's poor. So I feel like she's in this impossible situation of like, she can't win for losing. Like there's nothing that she can do that people aren't going to tear her apart for.
That's a good point. But Zack, she's calling the paparazzi on herself. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, no, and I know this for a fact. As working as a publicist, we did this with clients that were disgraced. We would call the paparazzi and then be horrified. Oh my God, oh my God, like, what do you mean the paparazzi came? Like, paparazzi, first of all, do not go into TJ Maxx. So those photos
that's what I said. When I saw those photos, I was like, the reason, like, I'll give her the gas station. I'll give her the walking down the street. I'll give her the ones outside of her house. Fine. I'll give you I know everyone wants to think that they're all fake. And I'm like a little bit of 50-50 where I'm like, people call paparazzi on themselves all the time. But at the same time, this is highly publicized. Paparazzi are trying to make money. They know where she lives now. So them catching her walk outside, when they're catching her getting a delivery of roses and there's a brand attached to it, I'm skeptical. But her just walking out of her house to her car and looking disheveled, whatever. The TJ Maxx one was a big red flag to me because I'm like, the photos are from inside the store and paparazzi typically don't get to go inside the store and photograph anybody.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think that, listen, the whole like branded paparazzi shots are like, she knows she's not going to do that. But girl, put your hair in a ponytail. Like, I don't think that takes very long.
Yeah. No, yeah. I got it. So what was your reaction when you first started hearing of the scandal breaking, when she filed for divorce and then you start to see all the lawsuits coming out? Obviously, that's what we're watching play out on Beverly Hills this season. But as it was playing out in real time, what was your reaction to it? Were you surprised? Were you, living for it?
Initially I was like living for it and I wasn't surprised, sadly enough, because like just the way that the office was so opulent and the opulent life, just being around her, she had like 6 people in the green room. And like, the CEO of Sprinkles is 10 times more wealthy than Erika Jayne and she had 1 assistant. Like it's a level of like, in LA, it's like smoke and mirrors are like people's best friends. And I'm all for it. Like I've pretended to be like, oh, I got a sponsorship from Gucci. Like everyone's done this bullshit. Like I get it, but I own it in a way that I think that she's not owning. It's like, you're spending all this money. I get that, like, you put this money into your account, whatever. But then when I stopped living for it is when the Jen Shah thing happened. And I was like, is Bravo just trying to get us to get behind these criminals? Like, I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's like funny. Like I DM'd Heather that I know and I was like, Heather, honey, saying that, not good. Like, that's not good. Like saying you love criminals. Like, I think people like have this idea of like wanting to be on a TV show and it's scripted. This is your real life. Like people are not like Heather Gay, the character. They're like Heather Gay is supporting criminals. Like you really need to be conscious of what you're saying. And I've said a lot of dumb shit myself. I'm not perfect, but if you're going to do this, I feel like Bravo now is every season going to be about legal drama. Like even watching Salt Lake, I'm like kind of bored because they're not talking about the legal stuff. And I'm like, I don't like, when did Bravo become all about legal stuff? It's just getting old to me. Like and then it's also like, these are real victims that are sitting at home watching us like love the drama, watching us try to feel bad for Erika Jayne. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's hard to feel bad for you. You're a white woman, a straight white woman with privilege. You're still like not on the street. Like, I don't, it's hard to feel bad.
No, I mean, I think that's a great point. And like, she is still making a paycheck. She is still on Bravo. The reality is she's probably going to get a greenlit to come back next season, as is Jen Shah. As I've said, like our culture turns into controversy and scandal. We like it. We buy Us Weekly. We love People Magazine. Like that's just the culture that we live in currently. Love it or hate it. I know people hate it when I say that, but I'm like, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying that's the reality of the world that we live in.
It's true.
Last year, Donald Trump was the president. I'm not saying it because I endorse it. I'm saying that was the reality of the culture that we lived in. Right. And so unfortunately, that's the platform that, these cable stations have. And as audience members, we tune in because we like to watch the train wreck of it all. So you said that you were living for seeing her kind of demise, I guess, last year as it was all breaking. Why do you think she divorced Tom?
So, it's funny because I've sat in rooms with really big crisis PR. I didn't do crisis PR, but I've been around crisis PR. And it's so funny because people love to see someone become famous, right? Like, look at like the rise of like Addison Rae, right? People are like, oh my God, she's becoming, people love to see it. They love to see her fall. Her acting is bad. Her arm, like, in a movie that like, she's still going to get a Netflix deal, right? But people love doing the video of her arm being badly CGI'd, whatever it was. But like, I think people love to see people build up. They love to see them fall. But I think that at the end of the day with her, I think, yes, I was like, oh my God, it's like living for a little bit. But I also feel like she left Tom because she understood the image and like image consulting. And there was one of her image consultants that was like on a bunch of podcasts. And he's like, listen, she understands how things work. When you leave a man, right? Like if she was to stay with him, it would seem like she's endorsing him. To leave him, it all makes sense. Like I had a friend in high school whose dad had a big lawsuit and we went to deposit money in the bank and there was $14 million in his account. Erika Jayne is not the first person to have a bunch of money put into their account because their significant other or their family member had a lawsuit. That's a very normal thing to move money around so they can't find it. So again, did she know? Did she not know? I don't understand. Like, she doesn't seem like an idiot. Teresa Giudice, an idiot. Yeah. So we bought that story. We were like, okay, like she really didn't know. And I know a lot of wives with really wealthy husbands and they don't look at the paperwork. They sign everything. And if no one learns anything, look at the paperwork. Like your husband, especially if he's a straight white man, he's most likely going to get away with the crime and you're not. Because people love to see women behind bars. They love that narrative. Like if Erika Jayne was to be in orange jumpsuits, everyone would like lose their shit. Like that's just how people are. And really what you said was super key about this Us Weekly generation. Like I was flipping through Us Weekly last week and I was like, all of this is fake because I know these people and I'm like,
what's in
literally fake.
What's in my bag? Stars are just like us. Like all of those like it's all so pre-rehearsed and endorsement deals and brand deals and advertising. It's all smoke and mirrors.
It is. For every Addison Rae, there's 65 people that are just old white men sitting in a boardroom going, okay, let's negotiate. Let's do that. There's hundreds of people behind these people. And every decision, like people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Lil Nas X did this. I'm like, these are all planned months in advance. Like, people don't do stuff on the whim. That's just not how things work. It's a machine. And as someone who was a cog in the machine and I've worked with these people, I understand how things happen. And all of this, Erika Jayne leaving him, Erika Jayne telling the story about, oh my God, I didn't even say goodbye to him. I didn't take a single thing. I dropped him off at work. And these are all calculated, rehearsed stories. All of it. Whether or not there was no snow, whether or not there was actually a burglary, whether or not the car flipped, does not matter. It's the rehearsement of it.
Yeah,
that's what people are missing.
No, yeah, and I've heard that from mostly a lot of podcasters. I think as a viewer, you kind of just watch it from the lens that you're able to see it as, but more people that analyze the stuff, they are like, it feels very rehearsed, or it feels very much like she's performing a monologue that she's recited in her head.
Yep. And I've taught people to do that. And the way that you sell that rehearsed like statement is that you pause, you have emotion. Because a lot of times people rehearse things and they memorize it and they say it all at once. Mm-hmm. That's when you can tell they're lying. But when she tells things like, he got burglar, and there was the eye, and then all of those details, the reason they're not lining up is because she's lying. When you forget the details, that's the problem. And she's let go of the image consultant. There's no one to tell her, like, don't say that, right? The ankle's not matching up with the head injury, like all of that stuff starts not lining up. And for her, in a couple of months, if someone goes, oh, what happened with the snow? And she says, oh no, it was sleet or it was rain, then it starts to fall apart. That's the problem. That's a problem with when you're not telling the truth, is that there's gaps. And the Bravo fans are like detectives. They're waiting for you to mess up,
Yeah, which I also feel like is the double entendre. Like, you have fans that literally are waiting to pick apart every single thing you say. And you also have to factor in, like, whatever the story was, it was cut down into a minute and 30 seconds of footage that, was chopped up to, like, when she was telling the story of Tom driving into the ding dong ditch. And then we have confessionals of Sutton, and she's like, this story is very confusing. And it's like, okay, well, if you get into the production and the editing, they're building the storyline, the story arc for the feud that the two of them are going to have down at the end of the season. So it's like you have to factor in all these other pieces, but it's like, you're right. There are so many, like the story just, I don't know. I've had so many feelings back and forth watching the season and analyzing it, and then trying to just be like a viewer, and then trying to be a detective at the same time. And it's a lot. It's a full-time job.
It really is.
Like Kim Kardashian's social media. It's a full-time job.
It totally is. And it's not fun anymore. Like, when I watch Beverly Hills now, I'm like constantly having like flop sweat, because I'm like, oh my God, like the victims. And then just like feeling bad. And then I'm like trying to analyze it. And then like, thank God Kathy Hilton's there. Yeah. Because otherwise I don't think I would watch. It's
the season
would
be too dense. Yeah. The season would be way too dense, way too heavy. There wouldn't be anything. Like, Kathy brought the perfect amount of comic relief that breaks it up, that makes it palatable.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought I would be missing Juicy Apple Juicy, because I miss like that stupid drama, like where I'm like, okay, like this is not even that important. But now it's like, and then the whole like Jen Shaw of it all, and like all of the little things she says, like, oh, I would never go to prison or whatever. Like, and it's like, oh God, like I have to analyze. It's just like not fun anymore. Like, I want to have fun. And I hope, with Atlanta or Jersey, there's no legal stuff. I don't want to hear. And like, even with OC, I know they're going to bring up Sweet James Bergen, that whole like lawsuit. I just don't care. I'm like, we know you're bad people. We want to watch you go to lunch. Like, what happened to that, Bravo?
Well, I think what happened to that is that these reality stars ended up becoming celebrities, and they became targets of, one, more lawsuits, two, more press coverage of those lawsuits. I think Teresa opened up the floodgates with Scandal and, smoke and mirrors of Housewives, that now everybody's looking for that because they're looking for the story. And that's what Housewives has become. And then the other crazy part is you have the fans that get so extreme about these things, and so extreme about which team they're on. Like, for me, I watch the shows and I enjoy the cast as a whole, and I enjoy what every single individual cast member brings to the overall flavor. You know what I mean? I don't get a soup and I'm like, ooh, I love the cumin, but I hate the pepper. It's like, no, I love the fucking soup. You know what I mean? Yes. I love the formula the complete product.
Agreed.
And so I think it gets so extreme, and I feel like the media and the fans and the IRS, like, we're killing Housewives at this point. We're just destroying it because we're picking it apart in so many different ways that it's almost becoming less fun.
it is becoming less fun. And it's also like on some level, like you see it when Candy does a show or now Portia wants to do a show and they all like Bethany did a show. It's not good because on their own, they're not interesting. Like, you know, like that's why I love Nene for never doing that. Like she's like, did she do the wedding thing? I don't remember.
She did like a spin-off like special, but not an actual show.
Okay, good. So she didn't do an actual show, but she still did something. It's like, I just wish that they would you're funny because you have different layers and you can take a break from the intensity of Erika Jayne and see a little Kathy. Then you have a little Kyle and her husband. Like there needs to be some breaks. Like I don't want it just to be 100% all the time. That's exhausting.
It is. Yeah.
Are
you enjoying Salt Lake City this season? So far from what we've gotten?
I mean, the first 2 minutes were great. And then now I feel like it's a little boring. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, Meredith kind of got excited.
Because it's getting back to the classic Housewives that you just bitched that you miss. And now it's too boring.
I know. I hate to say it because I like, but Meredith really brought it. But I feel like sometimes she's a little like shrill. I don't like it's hard to watch her because like her and Jen are a bit shrill. Like it's too loud. Like I need them to bring down the volume a little bit. Like, and then Lisa has got to go. Like Lisa Barlow, I'm sorry. Like,
I love Lisa Barlow. I love it.
Oh, I just
can't.
Oh my
God, I love it. I love this look.
She's trying so hard to be a Kardashian. It's never going to happen.
If you could represent publicity-wise, if you could be a publicist to any housewife, whether it's to repair their reputation or amplify their brand, who would it be?
Well, I've always been in awe of Bethany. So I would like, I know she's really intense, but I feel like it would be really fun to work with that kind of intense machine. And then on the extreme opposite of that is Kathy Hilton. I think it'd be so fun to work with all of just like the craziness and the dinner parties and like just the way she operates, I think is kind of funny. I would definitely tell her to know my name though. I wouldn't be okay with being called the lady, but
to the point of Bethany, though, like Bethany is very extreme. And a lot of people have a lot of stories about not having pleasant experiences meeting Bethany. What would make Bethany different from your experience with Erika?
Well, I think Bethany is like, the thing with her is that I think having a daughter and like having been self-made gives her a softness that Erika lacks. So I think that with her, like, even though she's very intense, and I've worked with people like her that are very type A and are very like self-starters and self-made, and they can be aggressive and hurtful, but it's all for the end goal of their business. Where I think that Erika is just cruel just to be cruel. Just because that feels like, oh, I'm like better than you. You know what I mean?
I think that's a really good point. I didn't think of it like that. Because like if you think about it, Bethany had to build herself, you know? So there is an ounce, like the reason you can see that she's more egotistical now is because she had to fake it for a long time. She had to fake it till you make it. She had to build the business and the brand. And now she can be like, I built this empire with my hands.
Exactly.
Erika's money was never Erika's money. It was always Tom's money, you know, and she didn't have much of a career until Erika Jayne was created, and that didn't really pop off until Housewives was created. And yes, she's got a little coin now with her book, and her music's doing better because there's a bigger platform, and she has a large social media following, but she isn't that self-made sort of, like like her entire music career was bought. And it was paid for. Now we find out it was paid for by Girardi Keese. But like, you know, it's interesting to see that comparison, especially now that the two of them are not going back and forth, but now that Bethany's outing her on her podcast.
Right. She did. I mean, Bethany understands promotion. I mean, she talks shit about people and then she'll be like, go to, you know, be with Bethany or whatever. Like she always understands. She understands the assignment. She understands the assignment. It's like a Dorinda. They get what they're there for. And I think that is something that Erika's still trying to like get us, I don't know, to get sympathized with her, or I don't quite know what she wants. But what I don't understand about all of this, Zack, that makes me crazy, why did Tom do this? Like, was there a return in his investment? Like, I don't really understand why he all of a sudden was like, I'm going to support her and make her famous. I didn't understand that.
I think it was probably one, it may have been a way to keep her in the marriage, you know, because he had already had 2 prior wives. He had to pay them out. Like this could have been one way to keep her, was let me keep you entertained. Let me keep you happy. I mean, from what I've heard, she was a big spender, and she's a part of like the reason their money was depleting is because she just didn't how many fucks does she give? 0, 0, 0, none, not one. And it's expensive to be her. And so, she
kind of told us, Zach. She kind of already told us in her music, like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, no shit. So I think he did it to keep her and to keep her happy. And then eventually I feel like it had the opposite effect, because the more successful she became, the less with him she was. And then you see little, Amber Riley, who's out there popping around with him at all the galas, and she's the new girlfriend. And Erika's not showing up at the galas anymore. Erika's not showing up at the dinners anymore. She's living her own life and doing her own thing, and, meeting Scooter Braun in the sex clubs.
Oh my God. I mean, listen, for me, they started to become like roommates, right? I feel like sometimes they were like living separate lives. And then the whole thing about the whole narrative of her son living there, I was like, it seems like he's closer to Tom than you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting.
It is
he's
interesting.
like the stepdad.
Yeah. Amir, where can people follow you on the social medias and check out your podcast?
Yes. You can follow me on Amir Yass Official on Instagram and TikTok if you want all the shady takes, and don't take it too seriously. I don't really need you to tell me that you're offended. I don't really give a shit. And then I really don't. And then go to the Take On podcast, and it's on all platforms. So thank you for having me. It was so fun.
I love it. Thank you, Amir. Okay, so there's so much to break down here. So obviously, Taylor and I had a very long conversation about Beverly Hills, about her experience working with Erika. Amir had a very different experience working with Erika. I reached out to a couple of you guys. Some of you sent in some questions. It seems like it's very hot or cold. You either had a really nice experience with Erika, as in Taylor's situation, where she was like, she made me feel important. She made me feel like, I was not not like she was my superior, but like, she acknowledged my presence and made me feel seen, which I know around some reality stars or celebrities doesn't always appear to be the case. Then you have an instance like Amir, who's like totally different experience. And so there are two incidences that I want to talk about with regards to some of the stories that people have sent in. And if you guys have stories, please continue to send them in to me, and maybe we'll make this a segment. I don't know. We'll do something with it. But anyway, there was a Pride event that happened a few years ago that Erika Jayne performed at. One of the board of directors that was helping to organize the Pride event, I spoke to, and she shared her story about interacting with Erika. And it's so interesting because she detailed how there were a lot of like rules and demands around Erika Jayne. And this was like at the beginning of her Housewives start. Like, I don't think it was her first season, maybe a couple of seasons in is when she performed. So I wouldn't think that she would even be that popular. I was never familiar with Erika Jayne or Girardi prior to her joining Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Had no idea who she is. I had never heard of her, ever, as Crystal would say. And so when she joined the show, that's when I first heard her music. We saw the Painkiller music video. I think Expensive and what's the other one? How Many F's Do I Give? I think those are fun bops. They were fun to watch her do the music videos on the show. As a viewer, it was entertaining to kind of watch the Erika Jayne persona on the show and have this, seemingly popular music career. As I've talked to more people, though, it seems like some people really knew her. A lot of guys in the gay community really knew Erika, and she had a gay cult following. So I guess to a degree, there's some level of, significance that I guess she would have brought to performing at a Pride parade. It was in Florida. I don't know if that really is a helpful detail or not. But anyway, so in speaking to this woman, she shared that there were a lot of rules. She had to have tequila in her room. She had to have chocolate in her room. She had to have veggie platters, very standard. These aren't anytime somebody, you know, of notoriety has a green room, people usually ask like what you would like to have stocked in your green room. Like I said, I shared a bit on Instagram stories in relation to Lisa Rinna and Sutton and their beef. My background is in celebrity fundraising. So I know what it's like to have talent at an event and to have a green room for them. And you typically like to stock it with their favorite snacks. Does that necessarily mean that they're demanding? I know you hear these stories of like these big celebrities who are like, I want M&Ms, but only the green ones. And you have like this long list of demands of what needs to actually, you know, be in the room and how the room needs to be set up and prepared. Apparently Erika's room needed to be like super clean. Everything that she requested had to be there. You weren't allowed to speak to her. You weren't allowed to speak to any of her dancers or performers. You weren't allowed to look her in the eye or speak to her directly or take photos with her or take any photos of her. Very, very... Oh, I'm noticing that I have a little something in my teeth. How come nobody told me that beforehand? Zoom world, you're supposed to tell me about these things. Anyway, so long story short, Erika was seemingly very difficult to work with. Green room requests, not, you know, wanting to talk to them. Here's the other thing in listening to, you know, this story. I think when you have talent, like sometimes they can be a little distant. They can be a little standoffish. Obviously, if you're preparing for a performance, if you're preparing for a speech, like, you know, I can understand how you like want a little bit of space and distance. I would think in this instance, being that the primary like bulk of her audience was the gay community and this was a pride event, you would think you would want to play it up a little more. And like, if you really give the gays everything they want, wouldn't you want to interact with them a little bit more? Wouldn't you want to be more involved in the event? Wouldn't you want to do maybe like a meet and greet or kind of, you know, pass event goers by and, you know, kind of wave to them? Like, I don't know. I would think you would want to be a little bit more engaged. But, you know, in my experience, yes, you do stock the green room with, you know, snacks that they like, snacks that they prefer. A lot of the times, though, a lot of these requests, be it rules or be it items that they want in their room, doesn't actually come from the talent themselves. It actually comes from their team, be it the publicist, the manager, the assistant, the agent, whatever the case is. They're usually the ones that are making all of these big requests to make sure the talent feels comfortable when the talent arrives. Yes, there were the rules and yes, there were the requests in the green room, but then there was the experience that people had of her at the event. And apparently she wasn't very friendly. She didn't speak to people. She seemed very cold, which kind of depicts Amir's depiction or experience of what he had with her when he met her for the taping at KTLA 5 for her book promotion. So it got me thinking, well, does this mean that she has like two personas of like Erika Jayne and then there's Erika Girardi, and maybe Erika Girardi is a little bit nicer when she meets people and Erika Jayne is kind of like this cold, stuck up ice queen, and that's the brand and that's the image that we're trying to project. I just don't think Erika, being like a couple of seasons into Housewives, performing at a pride parade is going to be anything. Like, I don't think you're that much of a headliner. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think any housewife that goes and does a performance, I mean, maybe Countess Luann can have a little bit of the, you know, delusion that she's, you know, somewhat more important, considering she does like sold out cabaret shows all around the country, and that's kind of like the bulk of what she's building her career as moving forward. Is she really a cabaret star? You know, the argument is kind of you know, it's more of the novelty of the Housewives brand and franchise, and she's just an extension of that more than she is like a really popular, successful cabaret star. I mean, I've never seen any of her cabaret shows, so I can't fully comment on that, so I have to disclose that I've never been to a show, so I don't know what her full range of talents actually is. But I would imagine people, if they just saw, oh, Countess Luann performing at so-and-so theater at, you know, whatever tonight, most people wouldn't like just want to show up, and I wouldn't think she would have a huge, massive following, at least not without the Housewives. Like, people are attending her events because they know it's part of Housewives, and they want to talk about, oh, I met Real Housewife of New York, Luann, this was my experience, this was the show, etc., etc. So there's Erika and her performing, and apparently that's very standard of people that have interacted with her at these performances. There is more of a cold persona. But then we have another instance where there is somebody that also interacted with Erika and met her several times, worked closely with, I guess, production for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and has had multiple interactions, doesn't know her personally, but from their depiction, she was very much like, I've met Erika several times, and all of my interactions have actually been very pleasant, surprisingly. And it's shocking. It's interesting to hear like Taylor's depiction of it, where she was talking about how Erika really much was engaged with her and remembered her. And this other person that I spoke with, let's name her, I don't know. We'll name her Tammy. So I spoke with Tammy, and Tammy basically said that she'd met Erika a handful of times, and it was mostly around production for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But in every single instance that they had been interacting, Erika seemed to remember Tammy. Erika seemed to converse with Tammy, would kind of make sure that she acknowledged her presence, which I think is important. I think when there's talent, especially when you're, again, I've also been around production, and when housewives are filming, they're very much involved in their own world. So they don't often interact with anybody else around them. So I think in this instance, that there is a lot to be said that, Erika even acknowledges people while she's being filmed. I mean, is she being mic'd? Are the cameras around? Does she kind of have to be nice? That is another very valid point. Is Erika only being nice to people when the cameras are around because she's mic'd and that could potentially be caught and used on the show? Possibly. I don't know if she's necessarily worried about being considered cold or inconsiderate or demeaning to people around her. I don't even know if that's much of a priority for Erika and her reputation. I mean, clearly we can see, her reputation is just, it's not in the best place right now, and she's not really doing anything to help that with some of her social media posts. So it's interesting to just hear the juxtaposition of experiences that people have had with her. Some of them really good, some of them really bad. I wasn't able to really find any cohesion. Like I said, at first I was like, maybe when she's Erika Girardi, she's a little nicer. She's a little more less guarded and more willing to engage with people. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because in most of these instances, she was playing up the role of Erika Jayne. And I mean, is it because she was having a bad day? Is it the person interact? I mean, like Amir seems like a really nice guy. This woman that I talked to at the Pride Festival, we'll name her Jennifer. Jennifer seemed like a really nice woman. I actually enjoyed speaking to Jennifer, had a great conversation with Jennifer. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to kind of... So here's the thing when it comes to talent and events. So in working with talent myself, there were instances where... yes, you would stock the green room with certain snacks. And yeah, you would kind of like have this unspoken sort of, not rule, but like a conversation of like, okay, well, when talent is here, we need to be respectful of their space. We need to be respectful of, the fact that they are either performing or, going to make a speech, or they're at this event to schmooze sponsors, whatever the case may be. The talent is there to do a job, and you want to make sure you're not kind of distracting them. Obviously, when you're interacting with a lot of people, that's a lot of energy that you're giving to people. You're taking on their energy. Sometimes that energy can be very manic. So, I understand wanting to give talent space and distance, especially when you have people that are, like interns or volunteers. They get a little more excited if they're not used to being around talent very often. And, they do want to take selfies and interact with them. That way they have a story to be able to share. And so part of your job is to protect the talent and to kind of protect their space so that there aren't too many people coming up to them and there aren't too many people. Like, I know there have been several instances where I had to be the asshole to protect the celebrity, to protect their reputation, where I can tell maybe they were getting a little agitated with a fan or, something. And I had to be the one to kind of intersect and be the asshole that was like, okay, I have to take them on their plane and they have to leave right now, or whatever the case may be. So there are instances like that. And I know in working with like, volunteers and stuff, like sometimes you do kind of say, make sure you kind of keep your distance. Let's not take any photos of them. They're here to walk the step and repeat. They're going to do their photos there. But like when you're here and you're working an event, it's not very appropriate to, in the middle of the event, if you're working it, to walk up to them and ask them for a selfie at that point. But like, I would always make sure if there was somebody that did want a selfie, like come to me, talk to me, and I can see if I can arrange that maybe at the end of the event, or maybe when there's some downtime or whatever the case may be. And I always tried to be very good about that. But I do know that there are a lot of secondhand information. And a lot of the times it's assistants, it's managers, it's agents that are relaying a lot of these messages, like don't take photos with them, don't look them in the eye, don't make sure nobody speaks to them. It doesn't always come from the talent directly. And a lot of times it's in protection of the talent. In this case, these were direct interactions that people had with Erika. Amir and Jennifer being two that were discussed on the show today. Those were direct experiences. And I can't say that was a manager or an agent or an assistant that requested those things. Obviously the impression that they got from Erika is that she was very cold. As Amir said, he was a big fan of Erika's prior to her joining the show. Jennifer was also said she was a huge fan of Erika prior, was actually really excited to meet Erika and was very disappointed in how she ended up being in person. I know they always say don't meet your heroes because you'll always end up disappointed. I don't think that's always necessarily true, but it's interesting to see people's different perspectives on all of it. I've tried to make sense of it. I've tried to find some cohesion amongst all of the stories, but I have yet to actually find that. Maybe I need more stories. So if anybody has had any sort of interaction, maybe you met her at a book signing, maybe you saw her out at a restaurant, whatever it is, big or small, bring it to moi. Not de moi, but bring it to moi. Me, Zack Peter. Let me know, because I want to know. Let's dissect this further. Or if you've had an experience with Tom, has Tom hit on you? Have you been a former client? We'll get into all of that. Or maybe you don't even give a shit about these stories and this was a waste of an episode. And if that's the case, then I'm sorry I ruined your Wednesday. But have some No Filter Rosé and it'll make it a little bit better. Thank you guys for listening to #NoFilter with Zack Peter. That's all I got for you for this week, you guys. We'll have a new live uploaded to the podcast this Friday. If you want to catch the recording live, we tape it live every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern at No Filter with Zack on Instagram. So you can go over there, give us a follow, and join our lives every Thursday night. And if you don't want to join live, I know some of you are on the East Coast and you're like, 9:30, that's too late. I got to go to bed. I got to get up early, boo. And I'm like, I got you. You're good. I upload it on Friday mornings on the YouTube. I'm in the live chat right there with you guys, and it's available on the podcast so you can listen in. This Friday, all new episode of #NoFilter with Zack Peter. I'll recap Potomac, I'll recap Salt Lake City, I'll recap Beverly Hills, and we'll talk about any other breaking news that happens between now and then. Thank you guys for listening to #NoFilter with Zack Peter. That's me. You can give me a follow at JustPlainZack. Follow the show at No Filter with Zack. Join our private Facebook group. The link is in the description below. Be sure to get my wine. Housewives inspired wine. I call it Housewives watching wine so that we can sip it while we're watching and yelling at the TV and we're watching at Erika go off on site or what? I'm coming for you. You ever call me a liar again? I'm coming for you. NoFilterWine.com. All right, guys. Love you. Mean it. Talk to you later. Bye.